Thanks for watching Hack the File. I'm Michael Lopez, and on today's episode, we're going to be going over developing cybersecurity programs and policies. Enjoy. All right, so today I want to go over something a little bit different, but equally as important: cybersecurity. A lot of people, when they get their cybersecurity degrees or they study cybersecurity or whatnot, they're gonna get into the non-technical side, which I don't like that word, non-technical. Um, people try to say developing cybersecurity policies and programs is non-technical, but it's not. Okay, um, you have to have some technical knowledge, and you have to have I would say someone you have to have an understanding of technical uh, um, practices, right? So, I mean, it just helps if you understand the ins and outs and outs and ins of networking and what you're doing, um, and how hackers or attackers. Let's use the word attackers because hackers is kind of like well, I don't know, it's taboo, right? So let's just say attackers that are going to try to compromise your system or your network, right? And this can be in any setting, industrial settings. It can be in just a basic network for industrial settings. It could be um, any kind of network, right? And so, developing cybersecurity programs and policies, um, I would say it is technical. Okay, so a lot of you guys, when you try to look for jobs or whatnot, you're going to run into a lot of developing cybersecurity policies and procedures and programs, right? Um, so, what I want to do is make a video just to give you kind of an idea where to start, right? So, I hate to say it, but when you get into the industry, a lot of places that are incorporating their cybersecurity policies, um, they don't understand or don't realize, how to come at this, right? So you'll have a lot of companies or entities or organizations, whatever you want to call it, government or private sector, it doesn't matter, any entity that's trying to develop a cybersecurity program and policies, will um, do it the way they want to do it, which is basically, or not do it the way they want to do it. Let me strike that, reverse it. They want to basically follow NIST or ISO or whatever to the T, right? And so they'll grab like a NIST program, the NIST guide for it, whatever it may be, because NIST has guidance on all kinds of programs and policies and procedures that they recommend putting in place. Now, a lot of these organizations will just grab that and go word for word, or just copy it word for word, cover each um, recommended guideline for each individual um, policy. In this case, it would be like access control, right? So we go in this book, and I'm gonna, I cover the book and everything, so we're gonna start from the start. But like, they'll go to, access control management or something, and they'll just follow what NIST says, right? And that's not fine, right? So each and every individual um, entity, we're gonna say entity, right? Because it could be privately owned, it could be government, it could be anything that needs the policy, right? So each individual organization or entity is different. Okay. Now there's many things to consider when when dealing with these programs and policies, right? Um, okay, so you need to consider first your state you're in, right? There might be laws that you have to abide by. There might be federal laws and state laws. You have two different sections of the government that you have to abide by, and they're usually in contradiction to each other. But that's something you have to take into effect, right? You can't just follow the NIST guidelines. That's just a blank. That's a guideline, right? You have to do more due diligence into it of your organization, right? So this video is just going to be a heads up for you guys that are or that you guys are that are you're in cybersecurity. Maybe you haven't touched on something like this too much. This will be an introduction to what are the things you need to research, right? Because we're doing research, right? And that way, when you hit the field, if you get on a team, let's say, where you have to develop these programs, um, you have a better idea of what needs to be done and what needs to be considered, because um, most places aren't going to tell you. Okay, they're doing their best, and they don't even know, right, at this point, until people that actually go to school in this or get trained in this or do their due diligence in books and study. For this book, for instance, is a great book to get you guide you what to study and what to prep yourself for it. So if you're getting into the field, and let's say you're on the programmatic team or whatever team, this would be a great book for anybody on a team like that to pick up and study. Okay, now that way, when you're writing these policies, you'll or whatever, and you're helping write them or you're writing by yourself, doesn't matter. You have a reference to go to say, no, this is what I'm doing. If you're questioned, right? So sometimes they'll question, well, why are you doing this? Why are you doing it? And it's not that I've come to the realization that it's not that they don't trust you. It's just that they want to know why. They want to know why you're doing this, right? And then, if you're on a good team, they'll take it into consideration and go, "Oh, okay, great. Then that's good." If you're on a bad team and they just want you to do it their way, and which is probably just following the NIST or whatever ISO or whatever government guideline agency to the T, then they're not gonna want actual real programs that actually make sense to your organization. I'm sorry to say, but that's the way it is. But see, so this book will help you and guide you and give you a really good ground reference for if you do hit the field in this area of cybersecurity. Then you'll have a leg to stand on, and you'll say, okay, look, this is what I have been taught. This is what I'm learning, and this is the way we need to write these policies, right? Because so you have a lot of things. Well, let's go through the cover. Okay, so let's start. So it's Developing Cybersecurity Programs and Policies by Omar Santos, Cybersecurity Curriculum by Pearson IT, right? And we're gonna go to. We always like to go to. This is written in 2019, but it's a great book. So now we'll go to about the author. We always do about the author. So Omar Santos is a principal engineer in the Cisco Product Security Incident Response Team, PSIRT, within the Cisco Security Research and Operations. He mentors and leads engineers and incident managers during the investigation and resolution of security vulnerabilities in all Cisco products, including cloud services. Omar has been working with information technology and cybersecurity. You notice how they put those two separate? I love that. There is a difference, okay? Since the mid 1990s, Omar has designed, implemented, and supported numerous secure networks for Fortune 100, 500 companies, and the U.S. government. Okay, so he's worked for different entities, right? government, private, all that stuff. Okay, prior to his current role, he was a technical leader within the worldwide security practice and the Cisco Technical Assistance Center (TAC), where he taught, led, and mentored many engineers in both organizations. Within both organizations, Omar is an active member of security community where he leads several industry-wide initiatives and standard bodies. His active role helps business, academic institutes, state law, local enforcement agencies, and other participants that are dedicated to increasing the security of the critical infrastructure. Omar often delivers technical presentations at many conferences and to Cisco customers and partners. He is the author of dozens of books and video courses. You can follow Omar on any of the following: personal website, here's his Twitter, and here's his LinkedIn, right? Omar Santos. Dedication, acknowledgments, okay. So this guy, I would say, knows how to write some policies. So chapter one, and we're not gonna go through the book. If you want to do a video on, a series on this, let me know, because I think this would be great. Okay, to do a series of this. This right here would actually be something, would be a great series for people to follow that are not wanting to get straight into command line and admin stuff and firewalls and SIEM tools and all this stuff. Okay, so end devices. This protection. This would be great for people that want to create policies, but you got to know all that other stuff too. Okay. Understanding cybersecurity policies and governance. So, it starts off with that. And like I said, every good book starts off with history. So this is information security versus cybersecurity policies. There is a difference, okay? Many individuals confuse traditional information security with cybersecurity. In the past, information security programs and policies were designed to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data. Now, this CIA triad is, I would say, is the backbone of all cybersecurity. Okay? Within the confinement of an organization. Unfortunately, this is no longer sufficient. Okay, so he's saying it's no longer sufficient, but it is of the backbone. Organizations are rarely self-contained, and the price of interconnectivity is exposure to attack. Every organization, regardless of size or geographic location, is a potential target. Cybersecurity is a process of protecting information by preventing, detecting, and responding to attacks. Cybersecurity programs and policies recognize that organizations must be vigilant, resilient, and ready to protect and defend every ingress and egress connection, as well as organizational data wherever it is stored, transmitted, or processed. Cybersecurity programs and policies expand and build upon a traditional information security programs, but also include the following: cyber risk management and oversight, threat intelligence and information sharing, third-party organizations, software and hardware dependency and management, incident response and resiliency. Okay? So this always goes, these books, every great book always gives you a little history, right? You always start with a little bit of history. We're going to skip that. Cybersecurity policy. The role of policy is to codify guiding principles, shape behaviors, provide guidance to those who are tasked with making present and future decisions, and serve as an implementation roadmap. Okay, so what does this mean? Now we're looking at this, okay, and we're going, okay, well, that's great, but what does it mean? But this first sentence is powerful, okay? So we want to codify guiding principles, okay? We want to shape the behavior. So whatever principles that we put into place, we want to make sure people are abiding by it, right? Okay? And then we will go, you got to go into how, right? What are you going to do if they break the policy, and you're going to put it, it's not set in stone, but you're going to make a policy, right? Because every situation is different. We're going to provide guidance to those who are tasked with making present and future decisions. Now, this is whoever's in charge. We're going to designate people in charge of certain areas, okay, and serve as an implementation roadmap. So, um, yeah, okay. A cybersecurity policy is a directive that defines how the organization is going to protect its information, assets, and information systems. And then how are you going to do that, right? Ensure compliance. So when you're writing the policy, you need to, let's say you're doing it on access management, you need to set that all up and say, this is what we're going to do, right? And this is how we're going to do it. Ensure compliance with legal and regulatory requirements. Now, this is what I was talking about. Ensure compliance with legal and regulatory requirements, and that's state and federal. Okay, you have two different ones. And so your company compliance, right, has to line up with the state and federal compliances too, right? Or else there's fines and all kinds of stuff. And maintain an environment that supports guiding principles. So this is another, you know, cultural thing, right? And stuff in line. So this is a powerful little paragraph. The objective of a cybersecurity policy and corresponding program is to protect the organization, its employees, its customers, and its vendors and partners from harm resulting from internal or accidental damage, misuse, or disclosure of information. Right, and that goes back to the CIA triad, right? But it's more custom, okay, to each organization or entity, as well as to protect the integrity of the information and to ensure availability of information. So this is going over the CIA, right? This gives you a little life cycle where you plan, right? Research. See how research is in there? It's in there for a reason. You're not just going to take the NIST guidelines and go word for word and see if it matches with what your company is. You're going to do your research. Okay, and we'll go over more of this in a second, right? You're going to write, you're going to vet, you're going to approve, and you're going to authorize. And then you're going to communicate when you publish it. Now, communicate. Who do we communicate with? This means you're going to communicate with the people that need to know what particular policy or part or section of the policy that needs to know. Okay, you're going to disseminate and you're going to educate. Okay, adopt. Now you're going to implement, you're going to monitor, and you're going to enforce. Now, this is important. So how do you monitor? So you're going to monitor people that are not following the policy. You're going to monitor that. You're going to monitor the people that are. Okay, you're going to enforce. Now you have to set guidelines for what the consequences will be if they don't follow the policy. Okay, let's say for instance you have somebody that is looking at PII of somebody, and they get caught, and they're looking at other people's private information without their authorization, and before they actually can, because their job might be to look at that, but their job, let's say for instance the medical field, this was a great exercise that I took in my class. It was great because in the medical field, let's say you have an employee there that's a nurse, and he or she has their child or their guardian or their sibling or whatever, anybody in their family that's in the emergency room. Okay, the results are coming back too slowly to them. So what that person does is they abuse their power and they look up the PII before it's actually released legally, and they do it by using their power. Now that's a tricky situation, because are they doing it for convenience, or are they doing it out of concern because they just got hit by a car or something in their emergency room? They sincerely want to know, or they've got a cold or something, and and it can wait, but they didn't want to wait. So it's either, so there's a lot of gray area. There's a lot of things to consider. It's on a micro um, thing, but there has to be a policy in place, right? And it went to enforce it, right? That has to be in there on most of your policies. Okay, and then review. So you're gonna solicit feedback, and you're gonna reauthorize or retire, right? And this is part of the complete cycle. The activities in the cybersecurity policy lifecycle described in this figure will be similar among different organizations. On the other hand, the mechanics will differ depending on the organization, if it's corporate versus governmental, and also depending on specific regulations. Okay, so that's just a basic summary, right? Cybersecurity policy organization format and styles. Okay, so you need to be able to determine whether something is a policy, a standard, a procedure, or a guideline, and a plan. Okay, know how to use plain language when creating, updating cybersecurity policy, and this is important. Now, so if you're writing a policy, right, and you know that it pertains to everybody. It pertains to the front desk person, right? And let's say the front desk person has got basically no education, maybe just a high school diploma. He answers the phone, but it still applies to somebody, okay, like that. So you need to write it in language that's easy enough for everybody to understand. But if you're writing a policy that's just for a certain set of people that are on a higher level, then you need to write it for them so they can understand, right? It doesn't all have to be super plain language, especially if you're writing something for, like, let's say IT. Okay, so if you're writing a policy that pertains just to IT, like let's say access management, you're going to write that in language they can understand. You're not going to write it in non-technical terms, maybe, or stuff that where they don't even understand what you're saying, because you're writing it for the front desk person to understand too. The front desk person, I mean, that's probably not a really good example of access management, because the front desk person needs to be able to understand it too, right? Because it's access management. But there are certain policies that it needs to be at a certain level for the majority of those people to understand, and we'll get to all that in a second. I'm thinking more like technical policies, right? But it needs to be in plain language. Okay. Identify the different policy elements. Okay, include the proper information on each element in policy. So you need to include. That's just common sense, right? So this chapter goes over the writing style technique. Let's go through that. Writing style technique. Style is critical. The first implementation of a document is based on its style and organization. If the reader is immediately intimidated, the contents become irrelevant, right? Keep in mind that the role of policy is to guide behavior. That can happen only if the policy is clear and easy to use. How the document flows and the words you use will make all the difference as to how the policy is interpreted. Know your intended reader, that's what I just said, and write it in a way that's understandable. Use terminology that is relevant. Most important, keep it simple. Policies are overly complex, tend to be misinterpreted. Policies should be written using plain language. There you go. Using plain language. In the term plain language means using the simplest, most straightforward way to express an idea, right? No single technique defines plain language. Rather, plain language is defined by results. It is easy to read, understand, and use. Studies have proven that documents created using plain language techniques are effective in a number of ways, and here's a reference. Readers understand documents better. Readers prefer plain language. Readers locate information faster. That's a given. Okay, policy format. Writing policy documents can be challenging. Policies are complex documents that must be written to withstand legal and regulatory scrutiny at the same time be easily read and understood by the reader. The starting point for choosing format is identifying the policy audience. Okay. And so this goes over a lot of good information each chapter. Okay, cybersecurity framework. You have to understand confidentiality, integrity, and availability, CIA security model or triad. Describe the security objectives of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Discuss why organizations choose to adopt security frameworks. Now, this one is important. You need to find the framework, okay, that suits your company. And usually, organizations, especially in government, they usually use this, right? Unless medical, they use ISO or something. So it's different frameworks. And if you don't know what a framework is, you need to look that up. They're just this is how you're going to set up your framework, according to what guidelines and what organization you're running. Okay. Understand the intent of the National Institute Standards of Technology cybersecurity framework. So you need to understand the intent. Okay. Understand the intent of the ISO IEC 27,000 series of information security standards. Outline the domains of an information security program. Okay. Now we all know what confidentiality, integrity, and availability is. If you don't, look that up. Okay. NIST Cybersecurity Framework. Before discussing the NIST Cybersecurity Framework in detail, let's define a security framework. A security framework is a collective term given to guidance on topics related to information security, system security, predominantly regarding the planning, implementing, managing, and auditing of overall information security practices. One of the most comprehensive frameworks for cybersecurity is NIST Cybersecurity Framework. You can go there. Pause it and you can get this down. NIST guidance into the trustworthiness of systems covers various technical areas. These areas include general cybersecurity guidance. You see that guidance there? Cloud computing, big data, and physical systems. These efforts and guidance focus on the security objectives of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Now, you see how he said at the start that this is not enough, right? But, the NIST framework security objectives on the CIA triad is not enough, okay? But it's a good place to start. Okay, now we're going to go here. Guidance and risk management, okay? Define governance, explain cybersecurity governance in this cybersecurity frameworks, explain importance of strategic alignment. Now, this is where I was talking about this. You need to have what is your strategic alignment. Okay, this is going into what do we need to focus on? What is our strategy? Okay, per company, per organization. Not one doesn't fit all. Know how to manage cybersecurity policies. Describe cybersecurity related roles and responsibilities. Identify the components of risk management. Create policies related to cybersecurity policy, governance, and risk management. Okay, understanding policies. Cybersecurity risks. 3 factors influence cybersecurity decision making and policy development. Guiding principles, regulatory requirements, risks related to achieving their business objectives. Okay, so risk is the potential of an undesirable or unfavorable outcome resulting from a given action. Okay, that's the basic definition for that. Activity or inaction, and then this came from England and stuff, right? So this is old, but it's the basic definition for risk. The motivation for taking a risk is a favorable outcome. Managing risk implies that other actions are being taken to either mitigate or impact undesirable or unfavorable outcomes, and or to enhance likelihood of a positive outcome, right? That's it. That's the basic definition for what a risk is. Okay? Now this is getting into risk management a little bit and governance, so that's fine. We can skip that for a second, right? Asset management and data loss prevention. Assign information, ownership, responsibilities. So this is important. Well, it's all important, but assign information, ownership, responsibilities. Who is responsible? That's it. So when you're writing your policy, you need to put in there who's responsible for this policy in all its sections or section by section, right? That needs to be in there. Now, you don't have to have specific names or people, but you need to have groups at least, right? And you need to have who's responsible for either enforcing or monitoring, reviewing, implementing, all that. Okay? Develop and use information classification guidelines. Okay? Understand information handling and labeling procedures. Identify inventory information systems. Create and implement asset classification policies. Understand data loss prevention technology. So this right here goes into what I said about, you need to, when you get into this field, you got to have some kind of basic understanding of the technologies involved in all this. Okay, you need to understand how and what we use to prevent data loss, right? Okay. So information assets and systems. What exactly is information assets and why protected? An information asset is definable piece of information stored in any manner that is recognized as having value to the organization. Information assets include raw, mined, developed, and purchased data. If the information is damaged, compromised, or stolen, a consequence could include embarrassment, legal liability, financial ruin, or even loss of life. Now, the loss of life pertains to a lot of fields, but one comes to mind could be the medical field. And this is why a lot of medical fields, when they get ransomware or something, they pay it. Is because they need to continue to do business, and their business is saving lives. Okay, and that's one of the things. Now, do you have a policy that you do pay ransom? Right? What's your policy on that? That you don't. And see, and this is where it gets kind of gray, and the policy, and so it's a discussion for who's in charge of your cybersecurity department, right? Examples of organizational information include the following: data stores or warehouses of information about customers, personnel, production, sales, marketing, or finances. Intellectual property such as drawings, schematics, patents, music scores, or other publications that have commercial value. Operational support procedures, research documentation, proprietary information based on experimentation or exploration, strategic and operational plans, process, procedures, and organization. So you can already see that a lot goes into these making policies, right? And I'm not even going through all these. I'm just skimming as what I think is the most important, right? In a nutshell. Okay, I don't want to make this video too long. So information system inventory. It's amazing. As amazing as it may seem, many organizations do not have an up-to-date inventory of information systems. This happens for many number of reasons. The most relevant is a lack of centralized management and control. Departments within organizations are given the autonomy to make individual decisions, bring in systems, and create information independent of the rest of the organization. Corporate cultures that encourage entrepreneurial behavior are particularly vulnerable to the lack of structure. Another reason is the growth of corporations, through acquisitions and mergers. Sometimes companies change so rapidly it becomes nearly impossible to manage information effectively. Yep. Generally, the plan is to consolidate or merge information and systems, but in reality, they often end up cohabitating. So we know why inventory is important. Okay, let's look. Understanding data loss prevention technologies. Data loss prevention (DLP) is the capability to detect any sensitive email, documents, or information leaving your organization. These solutions typically protect the following data types: personal identifiable information (PII), date of birth, employees' numbers, social security numbers, national and government identification numbers, credit card information, personal information, and so on. Intellectual property, IP, patent applications, production, design documents, the source code of software, research information, and customer data. Non-public information, NPI, financial information, acquisition-related information, corporate policies, legal and regulatory matters, and executive communication, and so on. Okay. The employee life cycle. The employee life cycle needs to be monitored. Special employees' life cycle models vary from company to company, but common stages include the following: recruitment. This stage includes all the processes leading up to including hiring new employees, and then all the way down to their termination, right? Orientation, all that. Okay. And these are the employee agreements, which you already know that. Physical environment, you know that you need to have physical protections in place. Okay, closed off to certain people, staging areas or whatnot, right? SOPs, okay, malware protection. Well, let's understand that data replication and all. This is going into deeper stuff. Okay, access control management, access control fundamentals. Access controls are security features that govern how users process communication and interact with systems and resources. So these would be different sections, right? Let's say you get hired for a company, and let's say they had insider threat problems or something like that, right? Or they suspect it's insider threat, or they've had it before, whatever. And you're going to set up some access control fundamentals, right? This is going to be a policy you write to prevent that from happening in the future. This is what we're doing in policy management. You need to take in consideration this of what your company or entity has had problems with in the past. It makes no sense just to do a real long, broad, wasting time and money on a broad thing that some of that stuff doesn't need to be implemented first. There's a priority structure, right? You would say, especially if your entity or the person you're working for, government, private, doesn't matter, doesn't have the funding. So let's say they're working on it. So it's good to know the budget. You need to know your budget as well. So you're writing these policies. You need to understand your budget. That's part of it. Now you may think, oh, that's not part of it, but I don't have nothing to do with that. But you do. You really do, because you need to understand. I understand when you get in there, you might, hey, what's the budget on this? They're gonna say, you got 3 months to do it, but that doesn't really help, right? You need to try to find out, what is the corporate budget, if they can give it to you. If they can't give it to you, then they can't give it to you. Then you need to get it done in 3 months. You got to get it done in 3 months. But then you need to know what to prioritize on, right? So let's say they say, hey, we've had insider threat, we've had a phishing attack, a lot of phishing attacks. So what would you focus on? What would be the main policies to prevent those immediate problems you have in that organization? Is part of policy writing. And I know that a lot of people, they have no say over that, right? They're just drones in a hierarchy, right? Or and they just do what they're told, and that's fine. But at least you need to have that in the back of your mind to know the proper protocols for that, or the proper way of thinking. Okay, what maybe if you're in charge one day, you can actually implement these if you're in charge or something, or if you want to make the company better, more efficient, more lean, then you'll have that in the back of your mind of what you need to focus on, right? It's priority. Okay, so so this is going over like access control fundamentals, right? And user controls and who needs what. And the objective of a user access control is to ensure that authorized users are able to access information and resources, while unauthorized users are prevented from the access the same. User access control management is enterprise-wide security risk. NIST recommends, see, that organizations manage information system accounts, including the following: identify account types. So NIST gives you a recommendation of what, of how to do it and what and all that stuff, right? And and especially for organizations, but it's just a guideline, but it's a good guideline, right? You're gonna be using a lot of what they say to use, right? Okay. So establishing conditions for group memberships, identify. But do you have to run through each of these? I don't know. I don't know. I think it's a waste of time and it's a waste of efficiency to just follow that guideline one by one, and update all of them one by one. There needs to be some pre-thought into what are the main thing and how main things to focus on and how you focus on them in your organization. Okay, and why, right? Okay, information system acquisition, developing, and maintenance. So, um, understanding the rationale for system development lifecycle. Now, this is a whole nother topic. These are all whole nother topics, but at what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at this from policy writing procedure, like your first sets. Now, going deeper into it, that's something else. But we're looking at the main things of it, right? And uh, recognizing the stages of software releases, appreciate the importance of developing security code. This is a whole nother area. Okay. Incident response, right? You got to have an incident response plan. Okay. Now, are you going to say exactly what they're going to do? No, you're going to say who's in charge of it, um, what is it, when is it implemented, what it does, how it prevents things from happening, right? Incident drain resources can be incidents drain resources can be very expensive and can divert attention from the business of doing business. Keeping the number of incidents as low as possible should be an organizational priority. This means as much as possible identifying and remediating weakness and vulnerabilities before they exploited. As we discussed in Chapter 4, Governance of Risk Management, that's a whole nother topic too. A sound approach to improving an organization's security posture and preventing incidents is to conduct periodic risk assessments of systems and applications. These assessments should be to determine what risks are posed by a combination of threats, threat sources, and vulnerabilities. Risk can be mitigated, transferred, or avoided until a reasonable overall level of acceptable risk is reached. Now, this is literally a quantifiable uh, word. Acceptable risk. You can quantify that. Okay, so it goes real deep into risk management, right? But this is just, you still need to, when you're writing the high level, or I would say when you're writing the policy of it, you're including certain things, okay? Like who's in charge of this, the incident response plan, who's responsible for it, who's what group is implementing it, all kinds of stuff, okay? Incident preparedness includes having policy, strategy, plans, and procedures, okay? So this is what we're focusing on, is like the policy, strategies, plans, and procedures. Okay, and there needs to be written guidelines and all that, right? Okay, and then so this is going over like what things to consider. You notice how it's not really going technically into it, it's just telling you all the things to consider. Okay, emergency preparedness, business continuity risk management. This is very important. This is a very important part of cybersecurity. So continuity planning is simply the good business practice of ensuring the execution of essential functions. Continuity planning is an integral component of organizational risk management. We define risk management as a process of identifying, analyzing, accessing, and communicating risk and accepting, avoidance, transferring, controlling, blah blah. Basically, a business continuity plan is how do you continue to do business in the aftermath, or the when it's happening of an attack or some kind of threat. Okay, is it, a perfect example would be COVID. Okay, so COVID impacted a lot of businesses worldwide because they did not have a business continuity plan, or if they did, it was most likely um, uh, we're going to store a lot of stuff that we need on a regular basis, and then if something happens, we'll use that, right? It's like your feast or famine. So you don't have availability to it because of the market, because of COVID. Nobody was shipping nothing, so you're going to live off of your reserves. Or the other way around, where they were going month quarter by quarter, and then when something happened, because they're saving money that way, when something happened, their third party suppliers were cut off, okay, because of COVID. So you need to have some kind of plan for that, and there's all kinds of strategies for that, and building better relationships with your suppliers, and finding different suppliers, maybe 2 or 3, emergency suppliers, and all that stuff. There's different ways, but a plan needs to be made, okay, and this is another policy that you can go into and create. So these are all separate policies. This is how we have to look at this. This is not, if you guys are confused, because you're seeing risk management, which is a totally different topic. You're seeing incident response plans, but it's that's a policy. It's a policy. These are all separate policies. Access control management. These are stuff that you need to consider for each of these different policies, right? And but risk management is an overall literally what it says. You're managing the risk, and that's a whole nother topic, right? So it gets really in depth and it gets really complicated, but to understand this clearly, okay, what I can help you with is that each individual policy, these are different policies, each individual policy is going to touch on the same basic things. Who's in charge, what's the plan, what is the monitoring, what is the review. So if you go back to this first one, okay, and we go back to the one where it showed understanding cybersecurity policy, right, and governance, and we look at this. This is basically, I would say this is a good little guideline. See, policy lifecycle. This is a good guideline here to start with, right? Just to start with, to understanding what each individual policy needs. So you need to plan it, you need to research it, obviously, to see if it's your compliance and all that. You need to write it, obviously. You need to vet through stuff. You need to get it approved and get it authorized, obviously, right? You need to publish it, communicate it to the people that need to be. So this is just a breakdown, right? But you got to communicate it to the right people, disseminate it. You need to educate the right people, implement, monitor, and enforce as part of it, and solicit feedback. So this right here but you need to understand what each and one of these individually mean as well. So what is that? That's the research. Okay, that's the research part. So that's how I break it down. So when you plan it, you're gonna look up, how do I plan this, right? You're gonna research this on your own, and you can use Copilot, you can use Google, or you can use your books or whatever. You're going to have to research this on your own, and then this research part goes through all of these. Okay, you need to research how you're gonna educate. Standard policy. Now, this is why a lot of people, they use NIST and stuff, because NIST is a great guideline, and there's different parts of NIST, right? And that gives you an idea how you're going to do it. But each individual organization is different. So you're going to that comes with the communication. Who are you going to communicate to about this policy? Who do you need to communicate to? And what's the most important things and stuff like that, right? So this is all needs research. Okay, so research is just here But research should be, I would say you need to research each one of these. This is assuming that you know how to do all these, or it's going to teach you in the book, right? But this is a good way to see the policy, each individual policy, right? These are all individual policies: access control, information acquisitions, security response plans, business continuity plans. And these are just ways. This book tells you ways, what things to think about when you're writing them. Now, is this the end all be all book? No, it never is. There is no end all be all. NIST is not end all be all. It is simply a guideline, okay? You need to do your own research, and you need to do your own due diligence with your company or your entity you're working for. You have some kind of understanding of needs to be go into it, a clear understanding. Then you can say, okay, who do I need to talk to? What do I need to research? Let's get it approved. Let's get it authorized. That all has to be in there. Again, you're not just gonna say, okay, this is what it is. This is gold. I wrote it, and I hear it. And then somebody looks at it and goes, well, I like this, but we need to authorize this, right? That's gonna happen. That's gonna happen. It needs to be authorized, or it needs to be approved. Okay, you're just gonna give them what you can and what you feel is the best information, right? And then they're gonna tell you, whether it's right or whether they can implement it, or because usually they're the ones that are talking to people, but you need to talk to people too, right? Um, Regulatory compliance. This is very important for financial institutions. Okay, so there's a lot of regulatory compliances, right? HIPAA and all this stuff that you're using. Financial institutions use the what is it, DCS or DCSS? I can't remember. But anyways, because they're taking information, credit card information, HIPAA. So this is a regulatory compliance in the healthcare sector. They use HIPAA, HTEC, and these are regulatory agencies that regulate these certain sectors. Okay, financial and healthcare are severely regulated. Okay, or not severely. They're regulated. See, so this DFS, Department of Financial Services. So this is a whole nother topic. These are whole nother policies that need to go into place. So PCI compliance for merchants. That's what I'm saying. PCI DSS is the understanding of payment credit card industry data. So anybody that takes credit card information, any company or anything, has to abide by the PCI compliance for merchants. And this is PCI DSS, and this is going to be your policy if you're dealing with card payments, right? And so this is another policy you need to set up, right? And then introduction, and this. Okay, so last but not least is the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, and we're gonna go over this real quick. So, chapter objectives. Okay, after reading this chapter and completing the exercise, you'll be able to do the following: understand the overall goal of NIST Cybersecurity Framework, identifying the framework's core, profile, and implementation tiers. Explain how NIST cybersecurity frameworks can be used by any organization as a reference to develop a cybersecurity program. Now, you have a lot of government agencies, I would say, the most, right? Because they're regulated, that are implementing these policy by policy and structure by structure, and it literally has AC2 or PC something, and they are implementing these one by one and going in, and then it's a never-ending saga. Never, because they're constantly having to update these. So it's just, you're burning out your employees and all this stuff, and they're getting burnt. There's never no rest. I don't think that's a good way to do it, but that's the government, right? But usually in privately owned or corporate organizations, they might do the same thing. I don't know. I've never worked for a corporate organization, but you would imagine that they would tailor their NIST program framework to and pick the main most important things that they need to focus on, right? Policy guidelines and how to do it, right? NIST Cybersecurity Framework is a collection of industry standards and best practices to help organizations manage cybersecurity risk. This framework is created in collaboration among the United States government, corporate. See, that's another reason. And corporations and individuals. And this cybersecurity framework is developed with a common taxonomy. And one of the main goals is to address and manage cybersecurity risk in a cost-effective way to protect critical infrastructure. Is that always correct? I don't think so. Although designed for a specific constituency, the requirements can serve as a security blueprint for any organization. Introducing NIST cybersecurity framework components. The NIST cybersecurity framework was created through a collaboration between blah blah. Blah. I'll start off with history. NIST cybersecurity is a living document. Yes, to describe the current cybersecurity this framework is built for standards, guidelines, and practices to provide a common guidance for organizations to be able to do the following: describe their current cybersecurity posture, describe their target state for cybersecurity, identify their whatever access, whatever. Okay, NIST is a very clear. NIST is very clear that the framework is aimed to complement an existing risk management process and cybersecurity program of your organization. It does not replace such a process or program. You can take advantage of the NIST cybersecurity framework to help strengthen your policies and programs by following industry's best practices. If your organization does not have an existing cybersecurity program, you can use the NIST cybersecurity framework as a reference to develop such a program. Note, even though the NIST cybersecurity framework was created in the United States, this framework is also used across outside the United States. The NIST cybersecurity framework is divided into three parts. So this is basically saying what I've been saying. Okay, I don't blame government organizations for following NIST to the T, literally to the T, because it was created by the government. And what are they going to tell? What are they going to tell their superiors? No, they can't. They have to implement it, but there is a way to implement it than following it word for word and to the T. That's ridiculous. And a lot of government organizations are doing this, and they're still getting hacked and all this stuff because hackers, attackers know that that's what they're doing. They know the cybersecurity framework they're using. They can, and if you're following it T word for word, T by T, they're gonna look and they can look it up. It's free, and they're gonna say, okay, this is using this. This is what we can use to attack this. This is what we. So they're literally their policy is this. So let's go ahead and see what we can do to get or circumvent that, right? And that's that's the going way out. But even if you don't go way out, I don't think it's this is my opinion. I don't think it's good practice to follow NIST to the T. It is simply a guideline. Okay. Now I understand governments can do it, but corporations and privately owned businesses don't have to. They can do whatever they want. So you use it as a guideline. You get ideas, and then, but I would say a stronger team for cybersecurity would be relying on the individuals' either experience or education or know-how on the team to implement better strategies than just ones that other people came up with, that the government came up with, and all that, and whatever. Now, I'm not saying that theirs is not going to be better. I mean, this obviously probably is, but the individual person can cut out all that excess fat. They can trim the excess fat of it. If you're following the NIST to a T, boom, 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 then you have a lot of extra fat on there, which that's what governments like. They like that extra fat, right? But for a corporate organization or a privately owned organization, you can cut that down, and it's going to happen sooner or later. The government and all this stuff, whatever, they're going to realize that they don't, or whoever's in charge one day, if they're of an organization, they might implement better focuses, right? On to cut down all this extra fat, right? Because there's a lot of things that you don't need. You literally don't even need to list it on there if you don't have. Now you can list it you can probably list it, but I don't know. I'm going too deep into it, but I'm just saying. Okay, the framework core. The framework core is aimed to structure a list of activities to reach certain cybersecurity outcomes, include examples of guidance to achieve such outcomes. Framework core: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. These are great, right? Okay. So yeah, so this is the NIST framework, and you guys should go and look up more about them, right? And then it's test your skills and stuff. So with that being said, I like this book. This is a long video, but I think it's important because this field is growing, right? It's growing and getting better. And so let me just show you a little example of what I did. Okay, so um, let's go to one of the policies that I kind of put together, right? So this would be like a, well, this one would be, yeah. Let me see if I can view this. Navigation pane. Okay. So let me show you a little example. So like, let's say um, I had a specific, I had a specific um, attack going on, right? Black cat, whatever. Um, Security policies to prioritize to reduce the risk of being infiltrated, right? So one of my things I put in there was multi-factor authentication. I had a certain people attacking our organization, and this will happen, right? And so I had to do research on Black Cat, right? It's one of the ransomware group. Okay, I had to do research on that first. I mean, this is what you're gonna have to do research. That's why research is part of all that. I say it's part of everything. So, doing after I did some research on them, I thought, okay, we're gonna have multi-factor authentication, right? We're gonna have network segmentation. We're gonna have zero trust architecture. We're gonna have an incident response plan put into place. We're gonna have tabletop exercises. We're gonna have data backup and recovery. We're gonna employee awareness training, endpoint detection and response. Now, I don't have to have exactly what I'm using, but I said, this adds eyes on everything. EDR tools track suspicious activity in real time and help you shut down before they spread. Right? It's just a basic what an endpoint detection response and response is a strategy. Right? Patch management. Okay. How these recommended policies serve to harden our infrastructure, and then I go over how they serve. Right? How each individual one of those things serve our infrastructure frameworks that the policies will be based on. NIST cybersecurity framework. We're gonna base these policies on the NIST framework, SP 800, sys controls, zero trust principles, and see these are the different frameworks that I'm going to be referencing to guide me, right? Because in this case, I chose these ones. Okay. Um, for this specific business, I guess I was mocking, right? Specific security measurements from the referenced frameworks explained, right? So, um, uh, NIST, CSF, and so I'm just going over specific stuff that these will reference. So NIST SP 861 incident response. So I'm not just going off of just NIST, the main one. I'm going into different ones. NIST SP 861 for incident response, right? And I'm pulling out stuff from there. Build an incident response team with playbooks ready for ransomware. That means containment, preserving evidence, getting clean systems back online. So this gives you a basic example of what this is supposed to be doing, right? So I want to build an incident response team with playbooks ready for ransomware, because in this specific case, it's ransomware problems. That means containment, preserving evidence, and getting clean systems back online. When time matters, this lets your team act fast, stay organized under pressure. So I'm going to reference this different NIST, not just one part of or the whole NIST as a whole. I'm specifically targeting this incident response area, and I'm going to cover these things, right? I'm not going to go through the whole thing, and I'm going to, because this is a specific problem we have in this organization. If we are compromised by Black Cat, I have a business continuing disaster recovery plan that I want to put in place. I have an incident response policy, zero trust security policy, if you're using zero trust, right, in your organization. But I would recommend this. I'm recommending we do this. This is the policy. Data classification, encryption. So I'm trying to sell the policies that I will be using, right, in this document. Okay, and that's a good document to look at because it's a good one. So now this one. Oh, this is my rough draft. Okay, let me see. What is that? State versus federal. Oh, this is a discussion that I had. Let me see. Anyways, so let's see this one. This one was I had AI. I had ChatGPT help me make this one. Okay. And this is where I'm trying to propose different policies, right? Access management, because I guess we needed to focus on this policy defines the requirements for managing access of this, I guess, this hack the files information and technical assets. The goal is to minimize cybersecurity risks and ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data is handled by HackTheFile. So the scope is this policy applies to HackTheFile employees, contractors, interns, and authorized third parties who have access to HackTheFile's information and network. So in this case, HackTheFile is this company I'm working for, and I'm trying to sell what policies we need to focus on immediately within our budget and all this stuff. It's a penetration company, right? HackTheFile. I mean, I just made it up. So I want to focus on access control principles, implement the principles of least privilege, ensuring all users only have access to the systems and data necessary for their specific job functions. This is recommended by NIST, right? All this stuff is recommended by NIST. Maybe not, this is the recommendation, but it might not be the way we implement it, right? To the T or exactly, okay? Assuring all users, okay. Enforce separation of duties by requiring dual control or approval. Now, not all of this is NIST. Not all of it. I got some of this from other books. I got some of this from other organization examples. I did my research and due diligence, and that's what it boils down to, right? And then I made it best for my company that I was doing it for, right? Sensitive tasks, ensuring individuals have full access to the critical systems. So this is all policies that we're setting up. Now this is just the policy at the highest level, right? And this is access management, and I put account management, access reviews, incident response, responsibilities. This is all was not all this. I did not. So I used ChatGPT just to give me the structure of the page. I did not use ChatGPT to give me these answers or do it for me. I did my own research on all this stuff, and I've got the proof to back that up. I've got rough drafts and all that stuff. But in this case, this example, they wanted me to use ChatGPT and compare it to something that I created by myself. And all I found was ChatGPT basically words it better, right? But sometimes it words it more too complicated, and that's part of it. You have to make it clear and readable. So there was positives and negatives, but this is basically the structure, right? Access reviews, incident response plan, and these are just policies that I want to cover right away. Okay, compliance. Review and update compliance state. And this is everything I read in that book. Compliance with state and federal mandates. This is all the stuff I read in that book, but this is just, like I said, the selling of the policy and at a high level of what we need to cover but then you can go deeper into it and how to actually implement it, right? But then who's going to do that? So you have to see who's in charge of doing that, right? So yeah, that's just a basic rundown on what policy is, cybersecurity policy. So um, I think this is a cool field. It takes a lot of research, though. You're going to be researching things constantly, um, just to have a clear understanding of what you're doing, of what needs to be done, right? And I would say that you try to customize it as much as possible, and hopefully you know you get on a team where you guys are all discussing this, right? Not just criticizing, and checking punctuality and spelling and all this crap. When you're on a team and you're collaborating on policies and procedures for a team, it's better if that team, if you guys all understand what you're trying to do, then you can get feedback on and communicate better, right? Instead of one person does this, one person does that, and all that, because that really doesn't help. And to tell you the truth, there might be a lack of understanding of uh, of the of what needs to go into the policy and procedures, anyways, right? Um, because it is complicated. It's not. It's very complicated. This is something that you have to spend a lot of time on, and you have to research, and you have to study, and you have to understand, basically, the difference between policies, frameworks, and like risk management, and then risk assessments. Those are all different parts of cybersecurity policy, of cybersecurity. But like risk management manages all the risk assessments and stuff. With the risk assessments and all that stuff is a policy in itself, right? So you know business continuity plans are you need to understand all this stuff and what they do, and do a lot of research and a lot of reading, right? And you, you're not reading just NIST. So I had I'm not gonna remain nameless. I hope they're watching this right now because it's ridiculous. I had somebody, one of my bosses, tell me, "Hey, you just need to read NIST. You don't just need to read NIST. That's ridiculous. Just reading NIST by itself is not going to help you understand what all this is and why it's all implemented, and why you need certain frameworks, and why you need to follow compliance, and how to do research and due diligence and stuff, and how access management needs to be controlled, and who needs in what, and what, like, like I said, what structure needs to be followed. That does the NIST does not NIST helps you, but just reading NIST does not uh, teach you how all this is implemented. It doesn't teach you how you know it's only teaching you the framework, right? It's teaching you your framework, but it's not teaching you how to see this from programmatic side, I would say, or or as a holistic approach to it, or an all encompassing approach to cybersecurity. Because writing policies and procedures, this is what cybersecurity is. It's just at a higher level, and reading NIST is only going to give you what their recommended guidelines are, but it's not going to tell you. I mean, there might be a lot of stuff in there to tell you how to look at it and stuff, right? But you have to do your own research, right? You have to have your own mind, and you have to do your own research, and stuff like so. It goes deeper into it. So yes, read NIST. It's good for you, but you also need to understand how all this pulls together with NIST as a guideline, right? So that's how I see it. So however you guys get into the industry, and you're interested in frameworks and policies It's a great area and it's very exciting. Um, um, as long as your ideas are accepted or you're listened to. If you're being told that nope, this nope, then it's a terrible field to be in, because all you're doing is follow. You're a yes man. You're just basically a yes man. You're saying yes man, yes sir, and you're getting it done. And I would say that's stifling. You're not learning anything. You're learning how to follow um, how to follow just how to follow. You're not thinking for yourself. You're not, So it's a hard area to be in, because, and a lot of people, they leave it. They don't want to do it because of that. They get burned out. For one, they could probably get burned out, and then they're being challenged left to right about what's the best thing to do. Or they double down and, like me, and they go and study it more, and I'm getting my master's in all this now, and I'm like, yeah, I see it more clearly. Or they stick with it, and they just do whatever they're told, and they learn nothing. Over 20, 15 years, they all they learn is NIST, and how to whatever NIST recommends and all that, and I don't. It's like, here's the reality. So if you listen to the podcast I listen to, and you listen to um, Darknet Diaries, and listen to all these people that work for government agencies or corporations that are actually teaching actual hacking preventative measures and stuff like that, they'll tell you that IT will do these things that are based on this and all that, and they're implementing SIEM tools, and they're doing this and they're doing that, but they don't know how the attackers are attacking them. They do that on a basic level, but they don't understand that there's ways around it. They don't understand the tools and all the stuff these attackers are using to they're missing that area. So then but they've been protecting systems for 30, 40 years the old IT way, right? And this is a modern age where there's new technology, new tools, new creative ways to get into systems, and they don't understand how these guys are doing that, right? And then these hackers that are working for the government now, they're bad, they turn good. They'll tell you that. They'll say, I've worked on IT teams that are doing this, and they're doing it the same way as everybody else, and they know why they're doing it, but they don't understand how the attackers are circumventing it. Because the reality is, all these companies are getting hacked, right? Government agencies are getting hacked, and they're either getting hacked easy ways, or getting hacked complicated ways, or getting hacked all kinds of ways. Okay, it's because they're not on the ground floor, or they were never in the ground floor attacking people, and then that's why these hackers or the governments are turning them out and saying, look, work for us, teach us how you're doing it so we can protect against it, right? And you're not never 100% protected. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there has to be a way to you, if on your cybersecurity team, you have to listen to everybody on your team, because everybody on your team has something to contribute. And if you're not running a team like that, and you're writing all these policies and stuff, and you're just doing this word for word, and all this stuff, and you're doing all this stuff, I don't. That's not good. I mean, you're not understanding how these guys are getting in your network, right? So I don't know, and it gets way more complicated than that too. But that's just that comes from a lot of research and listening, right? So if a criminal's telling you, "Hey, I can break into your house like this," are you just gonna go, nah, NIST, or this security company recommends I do this, and then you're not gonna listen to this guy that's telling you, like, nah, that don't work. This is how I circumvent that. But you go ahead and feel safe. I mean, are you that closed-minded that you're not going to listen to the bad guy, and when he's telling you how he's going to do it, and then he actually does it? I mean, that's just ridiculous. That makes no sense to me. right? And that's what the new cybersecurity degrees like mine and my master's degree that I'm getting and all that stuff is focused on more on real policies and procedures, right? And not we'll use we're just trying to think of it a different way. Like how you can. This is what these guys are doing now. I'm staying modern. And I'm saying this is what they're doing now. So when we, at the very least, let's have a policy, a simple policy put into place, or let's do our due diligence on the research of our third-party vendors to make sure they are doing the right things and stuff. If we're downloading software, if even if we're getting a CD in the mail, we need to know where it's coming from. We do our due diligence on the basic level just to make sure that, because this is what they're doing, right? And there's the disconnect right there. So I don't know. It's a great field. Just do your research, do your due diligence, and hopefully you get on a good team. And man, this it's an exciting field. All right, that was Hack the File. Hope you liked this video. It was long, but man, this is a very interesting field, very interesting topic. I hope you learned a lot. I know I did, and I'll see you next time. Have fun.